Hey guys, this is Reese Trino from the Vanguard team at Manor Realty. We are back with an old friend of mine, Sarah Sipkar. She is the additional dwelling unit expert in the Southwestern Ontario, Windsor, Ontario area. We're going to talk about the escalating housing crisis and how we are not getting out of this without additional dwelling units. And the Canadian Urban Institute, for example, talks about this, guys. We're going to talk about the problems and the hurdles that investors face putting these things in place. And we're going to come up with some solutions that you guys can implement to increase your profitability and help solve that societal problem. So, Sarah, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So, I don't know if yours was the first, but you put an additional dwelling unit in the back of your house very early on. I remember you graciously doing an open house so that we could all check it out. Was that the first one?
So there was two of us that were kind of neck and neck in Windsor. I like to say I was the first because I held the open house first, but yeah, I'll say one of the first. I'll
There.
be
Okay.
generous.
Well,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, if you were American, you would have said I was the first by far. It's in Guinness World Book of Records. Yeah, you
I
got to
was the
put your foot
first to, I
down.
think, submit for permit, but they were the
Okay,
first to get their permit. So, it depends on how you measure it.
you're very polite. You're very polite. Well, I'm going to be your bragging grandmother, and I'm going to say you're first. Yeah,
Perfect. I'll
we
take it.
were, but we were doing an illegal version of what you were doing for a long time, which was we were building additional dwelling units into basements. So close to one of them was close to your house on Jeanette. I did a fourplex and it had super high ceilings in the basement. And I built,
Might as well.
but there was no mech, even though the area allowed for zoning of sixplex, etc. There was no pathway back then to adding two more units. So I added them anyway, quietly. And yeah, yeah,
Grandfathered in later. So, yeah.
yeah. Well, that's
I
it.
mean,
Now,
that's
now they're
common.
still there. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
you know what? That's common. Like in Vancouver, there was a ton of units that were just grandfathered in because they were like, we have thousands of units. So, I mean,
yeah.
it's the way that people live. So you kind of have to figure out a pathway. So it's good that municipalities are doing that now.
I've pointed this out to the city councilors that tons of people are just building them to code, but not
Right.
pulling permits because of how long it takes. But they're building them
Yeah.
to code so that if the home inspector ever comes by and says, "Hey, what do you?" Well, it's to code, and then they know that the building inspector has to go and prove that. And when it's to code, right? Well, now you got to pay for
Yeah.
your permit. Okay, well, there's no permit.
Yeah. It's a
It's
little bit harder with the backyard homes because you could see it. Whereas the
yes. I'm
basement,
talking about basements. Yes,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about. So to me, there's four types of additional dwelling units, and you and I have talked about this before. For me, the top priority is doing the basements, and
Sure.
then in the detached garages if you can. Then the extensions on the back of the house so you can quickly steal off of the existing, HVAC
Yeah.
and plumbing, etc. And then the house in the backyard. Whereas you've focused and started with the house in the backyard, which I would consider the most expensive of the four options. But
Yeah.
you're working on that right now to maybe make it a little cheaper for everybody. Tell us about that, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I focus on exclusively detached units because we have a lot of really big lots. Two-thirds of Canadian municipalities are considered suburban,
Yeah,
meaning they have big lots, small houses, but also because the threshold for entering the housing market is becoming so much higher. So people see these almost as like an entryway, for that young adult who wants to move out of the house, things like that. So it can be a way to
right.
like share equity. Yeah, but the work that I'm doing is really geared towards modular units and craning them in place, basically doing the site work and then getting them basically on site in a fairly quick amount of time to kind of save all that headache of tearing up your backyard, the homeowner living through it. It's also a lot of time and money too.
Guys,
So,
yeah, these are the problems, right? The logistics, the time, the people building
yeah,
like prefab. There's no scalability in their factories. Everything costs a ton of money. Like, so, I mean, where are these solutions going to be scalable to a point where we're helping to solve the housing crisis? And I said it earlier, the Canadian Urban Institute is spot
yeah,
on when it stresses over and over and over again that we are not getting out of this housing crisis without additional dwelling units being a stopgap measure. Kind of like with climate change, where nuclear power plants are that stopgap as we move towards
yeah,
a carbonless society. Like, we're not going to use nuclear power forever, but it's a really good stopgap to get us away from coal
right.
plants and gas plants. It's the same sort of thing.
Right.
ADUs are going to be a wonderful stopgap to help the builders like me and the developers like me catch up to
Yeah.
the current demand.
Well, I think that's exactly right. It's a decentralized form of development. Like there's only so many developers, there's only so much private capital. You can only do so many projects. But if we can kind of incentivize homeowners to add a unit or two, that increases the amount of units that we have. I mean, you're right in saying that, basement and the attached units generally end up being cheaper,
Yeah,
just because exactly, they use all the existing, roofing and HVAC, everything. But detached longer term can sometimes work better for some families that have like flexible arrangements. They can be rental, additional income. So I'm really focused on detached because there's so little uptake in Ontario, and we're really
yeah,
trying to get to that like higher volume.
yeah. And I can tell you as an investor, and Stephanie Saunders on my real estate team, to my
Mm.
knowledge, she's the only agent that just almost exclusively focuses on house plus ADU with the investors.
Right, 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 right.
But between the two of us, we're dealing with investors. The investors are the ones building the ADUs much more than the sort of pure homeowner, right?
Yeah,
And when you're dealing with investors, they're going to want the highest return on their money, and that becomes, the basement's first, the garage is
yeah,
second, the extension off the back third, and then as an afterthought, if you do that second additional dwelling unit, you do the one in the backyard or off the alley. And I will say this: I did convince the city, and I don't know where it's at right now. Kieran McKenzie's just about to do a follow up on it. One of the city councilors. But I convinced the city councilors to bring a motion that was unanimously accepted to study giving everybody that wants to build an additional dwelling unit in their house, give them 50 grand.
yeah,
Because but it's the only hook's got to be that it's affordable housing, right? Which is
yeah,
80% of the median rent. Because for the city to go out and build something else again, like Meadowbrook, at the time, and it's gone up since then. At the time, it was $258,800 per affordable housing unit built.
exactly. Yeah,
Why not give the taxpayer back 50 grand of their tax money? It's their money. Give them 50
yeah.
grand back and have them build an affordable housing unit for you in their basement or the garage or in their backyard.
Yeah, I
Like,
spoke to Karen about this too. It makes total sense. When we run the numbers, most homeowners don't have the qualifying income because you can't count the rental income when you go to build it because the
yeah,
unit is not in existence yet. Lenders are starting to change their tune a little bit.
National
Um,
Bank. I just did a video on it.
National Bank, yeah,
Yeah.
National Bank is. I know that RBC has said we'll recognize like the Purchase Plus as well. So there's some, but
Oh, good.
the financial
Good. I
incentives
didn't
would
know
help
about RBC.
massively.
Okay. I
Yeah,
didn't know
yeah,
about
yeah. They're
RBC.
starting
Okay.
to.
So I bet,
Yeah,
yeah, but this is again, we talk about the problems, right?
yeah,
Society has a housing crisis, and yet you can't even finance these things properly. Like,
yeah.
when the hell are we turning
Yeah,
the corner on this?
if you finally get to a unit that you like, you realize you're a lot suitable, and then you have to go to financing. That's like
Yeah.
where where it's usually killed. So if the city is able to offer some kind of financial incentive, it usually makes the numbers work, and it usually makes the lenders happy as well. And again, it's about those incentives. It's going into existing, infrastructure. It's a good form of development for our municipality, so it should be a no-brainer.
Well, and I can think of another. You can probably think of more than me because this is your wheelhouse. But another thing that would make this way easier to get these things built, especially the ones that you do out in the backyards, etc.
Mhm.
Um, but pre-approved
Yes.
ADU designs. And
Yeah.
this is not unique. I know, like, there's tons of cities in the states that do it, like Charlotte, North Carolina. They have pre-approved designs for everything, and they'll change it by neighborhood. So,
Yeah.
you
So
want something to match old Walkerville, it's going to look like an old Walkerville ADU, right? Versus South Windsor.
yeah,
Yeah,
we've worked with the town of Collingwood, and they have a rapid ADU program, and they've actually implemented pre-approved designs. So they've had their chief building official look at drawings. Basically, builders can submit it, and then they say, "Yep, it's good with Ontario Building Code." And then we've built the ADU search tool for them, so then they can say, "Okay, these units fit on these lots," and it
right.
just expedites. And they're saying that like building permit turnaround, they're estimating I think 2 weeks, which is huge for an ADU as of right. So,
2 weeks.
um, Yeah, could you
I'd
imagine?
kill for 2 weeks. I would
Yeah,
literally kill.
yeah,
Give me a gun.
yeah.
I will kill for 2 weeks for building
Yeah, and
permit.
it's again, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, if we can just say these units are good, we just need to make sure they fit on the lot and they're meeting all the, public works requirements. That shouldn't take forever. That can be an expedited process. So, yeah, Collingwood is they're doing a lot right now to get more ADUs in their city.
Yeah, and is adusearch.com, is that still going?
Yeah, so I'm currently now with Resumate. It's a new company that was launched, but we took over the ADU search project when our funding ran out. So now we
Okay,
are working. Basically, we maintain ADU search as an open tool for whatever municipalities have their data publicly available. Then we use that data to fuel our marketplace. So we actually,
got
you
it.
can type in your address, but then now what we do is we match you with a builder with different models. You can see which models fit on your lot, and then we can coordinate all this service, so like delivery, installation, all that. So basically
Yeah,
it's a
and
way to expedite it. Yeah.
and you've got some promo right now where you're trying to shave off about 20% of the cost for anybody that wants to build these.
Yeah, so we are working on a pilot program right now because we know that the financial external factors are the biggest deal breaker. So we've been able to work with some builders who are willing to give a discount on the units themselves if we put in bulk orders, because they want to fill their build times, because they know
Got it.
that
Got it.
they're trying to manufacture. They're trying to just manufacture. They just want to, put this unit on a truck and deliver it to where it needs to go.
Sure.
So we're trying to coordinate the customers. So yeah, we have a pilot program if anyone's interested, but it is very time limited and very specific. We need to get all these units in by the end of the summer, and then on the other side of it, we would offer a rental guarantee to make sure that you're able to rent it for basically the cost, so that investors aren't losing money on the units, which
You
we
know,
know
there's
can be an
people that are
issue.
going to watch this in August to go, "Ah!"
They missed it. Yeah,
You know that's
it's
happening, right? This
if
is
you're
this is
watching.
evergreen content. You can't do that. I'm
Oh
just
no,
joking.
oh no. Well,
I
they can still
will.
check out Resume, and I'm sure
Yeah.
we can work out a deal past the point. If there are bulk orders, we're always able to kind of talk with builders and negotiate. So
And guys, I will link Resumate underneath this video on YouTube. If you're seeing this on something else than YouTube, just go to our YouTube channel, which is the Windsor Essex YouTube channel, Windsor Essex Real Estate YouTube channel, and you can find us that way. Um, yeah, I just really hope they start putting these pieces together. It's so sad that we're still talking about putting the basics in place. It's like, how long
yeah,
has this been a housing crisis now? We still don't have the basics in place, man.
yeah.
It just
You know
blows
what
my
though?
mind.
I think we're
Yeah,
in the early adoption phase. Like California
sure.
legalized ADUs, in 2016, and now it's like 1 in 4 units in LA is now an ADU. So it's like,
Oh, really? That
yeah,
fast?
for about 8 years now it's taken. But you think about California, they have huge industry, Silicon Valley, like they have all these companies with investors now behind it. And
Yeah.
so Ontario hasn't had that same sort of push. Even Vancouver, it's
Mm,
been challenging because it's so expensive to build. So we're really hoping
yeah.
that we can get to a scale where it makes sense. Yeah.
We are looking. I just had a meeting about this today, funnily enough, with one of the guys on my team. But we're going to look at doing a private equity uh, fund.
Yeah.
Not nothing huge, but a private equity fund just to churn these out, man.
Yeah.
Because it's just so badly needed. To the investors out there, guys, understand this. And you might have heard Grandpa Reese say this before, like a broken record. But in a capitalistic society like Canada that runs well, whenever you are solving a pain point of society, you don't just get paid more money in profits to do that, your risk factor also plummets, right?
Right.
So, what Sarah and I are talking about right now is one of the very, very best ways to profit off of real estate in this moment in time. And it's going to be for the next 7 to 10 years until the builders and developers are catching up to the supply crisis of housing, both for purchase and for rent in this country. So
Right.
there's a nice runway, guys, to get used to this, get profitable with this. And you might say, I'd love to do it, but I don't know how to do it. You've got resources like Sarah, if you're doing it in Windsor. You've got resources like me, and you got resources like Stephanie Alstead, my teammate, that focuses on this full time. And then you get to use all of our contractors, you get to use all of our contacts. And again, this is about reducing your risk, increasing your profit. We all want to see you succeed with this because it really helps the city. It really helps the country, and it really helps your bank account. There is a win-win-win-win-win situation right across the board, right? Who
Oh yeah,
loses? Does anybody lose in this, Sarah? Anybody?
I have not seen anybody lose. I mean, I hear so many positive stories from people about this. I mean, whether you're an investor or a homeowner, because we need housing units and people want, like, one of the things that I've heard is people like, we don't want to be put in backyard sheds like tiny homes. And I've been like, these are beautiful brand new units with high ceilings, beautiful
Yeah.
lighting. New, these are not backyard sheds where you're like living in,
Every time I
I,
hear something like that, I'm just imagining the peasant farmer with the pitchfork and the
yeah, it's
garlic
wild.
cloves and the cross. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep those ADUs away from me.
Or
Like
they say
it's,
things like, "Oh, now we have to like scale down our version of a single family home and we have to have," and I'm like, "You
no,
know
you
what?
don't.
We're probably
No, you
living in
don't.
two big homes anyway, and this is a good use of
Yeah.
space anyway. So it's a good
What
starting
I'm
point."
noticing that gives me hope as well. Like this morning, we were just in a builder's semi-detached, and
Right.
the what I'm seeing with these semi-detached over and over again. I was in a fourplex by the university late last week as well. Same thing. These guys are building higher basements, and they're adding kitchens and stuff into the
Yep.
basements, and they're doing ADUs, and they're like, "Hey, what do you think? Should we make this into an ADU this morning?" And I'm like, "Guys, it already is an ADU. You just have to block off this wall here."
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
explaining what kind of rents you can get, and they're like, "Oh,
We had
hey,
no idea.
maybe we won't sell this, right?" Like,
Well, they've
yeah,
been doing it in Edmonton. Like my sister lives out that way. They do new builds with the option of making the basement an ADU and the detached garage with an ADU up top. It's just like an
yeah,
option. It's already
yeah.
standard. And it's like
Oh,
that's how
right,
we really should
exactly.
be
The builder
building
role
new.
standard.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
another big thing I think that has to happen is the builders need to start kind of, as you say, at making it. You know how they got a checklist. Do you want rounded corners on your walls?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
that has to be one of the options. Do you want an ADU on top of your garage? Do you want an ADU in the backyard? That has to be one of the options for the builders. Absolutely, that's a
Right.
good point. That's
Yeah.
a good takeaway for me. Yeah,
Yeah. And even with that ADU, you could say this is how much income you can make from it. So then your purchase, like, plus, like, you're more, you can qualify for more mortgage. And that already exists. Like, the lenders recognize it. So I just think it's hopefully Ontario will come around to that.
I hope so too. And we are at like 18 minutes, so I'm
All
going to
right.
wrap it up.
Okay.
Sarah knows this. I've got a big soccer game. I'm Welsh Canadian, guys, and Wales plays Poland in about 8 minutes. So we're wrapping this up because if
We
they win
can't
this
go
game, they're going to the
beyond.
European Cup. It's very important. Very important. I'm going to get
Yeah.
Polish comments underneath this for days. Like, yeah,
Doing
win
it
or
the
lose, they're
haters.
going to chirp me now. Oh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But no, thank you for joining us, guys. I will put some examples of cash flow analyses of House plus ADU, so you can see how crazy the cash flows are on these things. And if you've got any other questions for myself or Sarah, our contact information is going to be below this video. Sarah, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me and happy to answer any questions from anyone. So feel free to reach out.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you.